Hi everyone, welcome to the lecture again. Today we will start with the second chapter. The title of this chapter is Thinking Like an Economist. In the first chapter, we reviewed some basic principles about economics, and there were 10 different principles which would help us to understand more the field going forward. In this chapter, we will talk a little bit more about a person who studies this field or a person who is an economist. And what does it actually mean to be an economist? As you already know that there are different fields in sciences, for example, natural science, physics, biology, and other subjects. Economic is also one field in social sciences, so it belongs to the group of social sciences. And most of the people, they confuse economic with the study of only finance or money or accounting. I would say it's a limited version of understanding this field. Economics is much more a broader term, and it's a broader field as compared to only a specific accounting or finance field. So the same as other fields of studies, economics has its own language. So in economics, people use a specific language to convey certain messages, which is mostly unique to the field. And as you might remember from the first chapter, there were a lot of terms that we have to explain. For example, comparative advantage or opportunity cost and other stuff. So economic as a field, it has its own language. And other terms you have heard like supply and demand and elasticity. These are all the terms that economists usually use, and it has its own unique meaning and understanding. And this field of economics, it provides you with a new vision or with a new way of looking to the world. So as an economist, you see the world from a different perspective. So you have another understanding of the world and how it works. So these are the main points as an introduction. And now we will go deep into the first topic. The first topic is the economist as a scientist. I remember the introduction video of this author which I've seen online, and in this video the author is wearing a white coat when he was talking and explaining this subject. And he said that economists, they are also scientists, but they don't wear white coat usually. So his message was that economics is a science the same as biology, physics, and others, but the only thing is our methods are a little bit different from the other fields. But the main concept is the same. So scientists, for example, physicians, they might work in the laboratory with test tubes, with different machines. But economists, they don't do that. But the main method which we are using, and that's called scientific method, remains the same. For others, natural sciences, the same as for the economic sciences. So the essence of science itself is scientific method, and that's actually testing of theories and how the world works. So as a scientist, what your job is to do research and to find how the world is working and to make theories out of it. The first subtopic is about the scientific method, which is observation, theory, and more observation. So under the scientific method, what happens is that economists, they try to observe the world, different phenomena. For example, they observe unemployment, they observe the economic growth, they observe the GDP growth of a country, and then they try to make a theory out of this observation. So first you look what is happening, and then you make a theory which will explain this phenomena. For example, you see that there is a lot of employment, and then you see probably there is a recession in the economy. So you observe unemployment, and then you observe recession, and then you try to make a theory to link these two ideas. For example, you can say that during the recession time, when the economy is going down, then there will be more unemployment in the economy. So that's a scientific method itself. It's the same as a physician or a biologist makes experiment in the lab, but in economics we usually do observation in the economy. And that also brings us to our second point, which is these scientific studies are mostly impractical in economics. What does that mean is that in economics, we have to wait for the economy, for example, to change so we can do our observation on it. In physics and other fields, they go to the lab, they mix different products, and they observe how is the reaction of different products when they try to make a product. But in economics, you cannot just change the unemployment rate, or you cannot just change the GDP rate. What you can do is you can wait, and when there is a situation which shows that the unemployment is increasing, then you will be able to observe and then develop theories based on that. Okay, the second topic is about the rule of assumptions. So in the field of economics, whenever there is a theory or whenever the scientists want to explain a topic, they have a list of assumptions. What assumption mean is that you consider some other aspects, some other factors to be constant. So you keep some aspect of the phenomena constant to explain one or two variables or one or two relationship. Why we do this? Because we want to make things simple. And we want to make complex issues and make it very simple to understand. One example is about the international trade. So in the coming chapter, we will be talking about international trade. And our one assumption would be that we will only consider that there are only two countries in the whole world. So of course that is not true, but in order to observe and make it easy to see the relationship of two countries, we assume that there is only two worlds. So we only say like, okay, it's only Germany and United States, and they are trading with each other. So that's one assumption. And most of the economic models, they have different assumptions. And the main reason is to keep things simple, to make it more comprehensive. Okay, the next subtopic is about the economic models. As I said, when we observe the world and we make theories out of it, so these theories could be also presented in form of a diagram, or it could be also presented in form of equation, a mathematical equation or a statistical equation. So most of economic studies, they also develop models, and this model is actually explanation of how the world works. So it's only a theory, so it's only a concept, and using mathematic numbers and statistical letters, they want to explain this theory, and that's called economic models. In this book, there are two economic models which I would highly recommend to review, and that will give you a more flavor of what are economic models. The first one is the circular flow diagram. I will read the definition of this term. A circular flow diagram is a visual model of the economy that shows how dollars flow through market among households and firms. So if you see the economy as a whole, it has a circular flow inside it. For example, $1, if you consider $1, it will go to the market. For example, you are going to buy something, so you will pay that $1 to the market or to the supermarket, and then that $1 goes, for example, maybe in form of wage to the employees, maybe it goes to the owner of the market as a profit. So this dollar would circle within the economy in a form of diagram which is presented in a book. So what you can see is that in this diagram, on one side there are households, and on the other side there are firms. So the household and firms, they interact with each other, as I said in the example of buying something from the supermarket. And then there are two markets. One is the market for goods and services, and then the other is the market for factors of production. I will not go much into detail of this model. If you have time, you can look at it yourself. The second important model is called the production possibility frontier, or the production possibility curve. I will read the definition of this model from the book. It says a graph that shows the combination of output that the economy can possibly produce, given the available factors of production and the available production technology. So in simple words, this production possibility frontier, it shows, given the amount of input that an economy has, how much of different goods and services an economy can produce, given the state of the technology constant. I will give a very basic example. For example, consider that in Germany, the country decides to produce only two products, one computer, another car. So according to this model, it says like, if all people who are working in Germany, if they will all be working given the level of technology and machines and other stuff, how much car and how much computer we could produce. And then if you plot these figures, you will get a curve. So for example, we can either produce 10,000 computers, or we can produce 500 cars, for example, or we can produce 5,000 computers, and then we can produce 300 cars. So if you put all these figures, you will get a curve, and this is called the production possibility curve. I will also suggest that you go and read this topic in the book yourself. The next subtopic is about microeconomic and macroeconomics. So as you know, economic is divided in two fields, or in two parts. One is called macroeconomics, another is called microeconomics. So micro means something very small and tiny, and macro means big and large. So in microeconomics, this field studies individual units or small units such as household, firms, or even a market. So if you want to study, for example, only the market for computers or the market of cars or the market of I don't know, the airlines, so you're just focusing on studying one specific market, and that relates to the field of microeconomics because it's very small, it's very tiny compared to the whole economy. On the other hand, macroeconomic is the study of an economy as a whole. So it's a very big phenomena. When you want to study, for example, the economy of a country, if you study the economy of the United Kingdom, if you study the economy of the United States, for example, the unemployment rate, the GDP growth, the inflation rate, then that relates to the topic of macroeconomics. I will read the definition from the book for these two terms. So microeconomics is the study of how households and firms make decisions and how they interact in markets. So microeconomics is the study of household or firms and how they make decisions. Macroeconomic, on the other hand, is the study of economy-wide phenomena, including inflation, unemployment, and economic growth. So if you are dealing with big data, with big topics, that relates to the macroeconomics. Okay, so that was our first topic of this chapter under the title of The Economist as a Scientist. We have two more small topics to talk. The next topic is The Economist as Policy Advisor. Now, since we are talking about economists, so we will see what role does economists play in an economy, or how economists are important. And the first topic is about positive versus normative analysis. So you should be able to understand and distinguish these two terms. I will first give the definition of these two terms. What does that mean? So positive statement is a claim that attempts to describe the world as it is. So if you say a positive statement, you're just saying how the world, the way it is. So you're just giving a description of the world. Normative statement, on the other hand, it's a claim that attempts to prescribe how the world should be. So you don't just describe how the world is, but how it should be. So you are giving your own advice and recommendation how it should be. So in economics, you both have so you play this both two roles. Both you can make positive statements and you can also make normative statements. So when you are explaining the world, if you say employment is increasing because of this and that, or the economy is decreasing because of this and that, so these are all positive statements. So you're just explaining how it is. On the other hand, economist also has the rule of saying how things should be in the world. So you can also, economists, they also, that's how the rule of advisors came into play, that they are advising, for example, the government how to reduce, for example, unemployment in a country. So when they are saying that, okay, if you do more investment, you will decrease the unemployment rate. So it's a normative statement that economist gives, and that's basically their job as an economist in a government. So these are the two fields, or there are two aspects of the field of economics. There is a small title called Economist in Washington, and this basically explains the rules of economist in politics as well as in the decision-making process. And there is one interesting sentence by one of the former president of the United States. His name is Harry Truman, and he once has said, like, I want to find a one-armed economist. So an economist who only has one hand. What he meant by that is that whenever economists are giving advice, they say, on one hand, this will happen, on the other hand, this will happen. So it means that there are different ideas between economists first, and second, probably their propositions, probably sometimes if it has a positive impact on the economy from one side, it might also have negative or side effects as well. So that's why most of the economists says, like, on one hand it will help, for example, the economy, on the other hand probably something other will also change. So that's how this field is basically. The next topic is why economist advice is not always followed. As I said, economists, they also can give policy recommendation for the government, but unfortunately, although these policies are very sound, they will help the economy or they will have positive impact, but given how the politics works in a country, their policies are not always heard to, or their policies are not always implemented. So probably they will give the best advice to the president, for example, but because a president is a politician, he or she has to also consider the interest of other groups, the interest of the minorities, or the interest of firms or companies. So they might ignore the best policy recommendation that the economist may have offered.